first couple minutes out. All right, everyone. First of all, thanks for watching my presentation, which is now a couple months ago by the time you guys will be watching this. But you guys should have turned in your assignment to Stacy. So I'm going to go over what that hopefully should look like for what you guys did. So the deadlift, what we're talking about, that was your case study. So we're going to go through the proper warm up for the deadlift, what differentiates the deadlift from a squat, depending on what load application you're using. So if you're not at the gym, you might not have a barbell like we do or kettlebells. So that's going to differentiate how you're doing it or how your client is maybe not properly doing the deadlift based on what they're using. And then limitations, what limitations may occur based on flexibility, how to address those. And the big thing we spent some time talking on, weight belt, whether to use weight belts or not. So Chandler's going to be helping me out here with this to demonstrate the deadlift based on your grading rubric you guys have. So first of all, the deadlift is a hip hinging movement, not a squat. So going right into the application, let's say you guys are at home and you have milk jugs to hold on your side. So we don't have milk jugs, we got our kettlebells. So Chandler, why don't you face the front door, Chandler, so everyone sees the side angle. It's a lot of confusion that usually occurs with using something that's not a barbell. Is not doing a hip hinge and squatting. You think, oh, I got something on the ground, I'm automatically doing a deadlift since I'm picking it up off the ground. And so what I often see that's incorrect, so Chandler, get set up with those kettlebells at your side. And so what I often see that's incorrect, you first think, oh, these, like I said, it's on the ground, I'm just gonna pick these up, that's a deadlift. Which a lot of times people will squat down too low, keep their chest upright and just stand up from there, bending their knees more, not hinging at the hips. So Chandler, go ahead and do that and see how Chandler's chest stays upright and go through a few reps as I'm talking here, Chandler. That is the improper form to do a deadlift since there's a lot of flexion in his knees and that angle between his quads and torso is very minimal, so he's not hinging at the hips. All right, so then to show the proper deadlift here, there's gonna be less flexion in the knees, more flexion in your hips, so you're actually hinging at the hips as you go through that movement. So to show you guys the difference, just pause at the bottom there, Chandler. And so see now when he's set up, his chest is parallel to the ground, so greater angle, the angle is a small angle here between his quads and torso. So now that's promoting more of that hip hinging movement, which now we're getting into the glutes, lower back, that posterior chain and you can go through a couple reps there, Chandler. That posterior chain that I mentioned during my conversation with you guys. So that's where the load application can become confusing for people with doing a deadlift and confusing it with a squat. So that's that. You can pause there, Chandler. So now that you guys understand that's where it can get confusing with your load application. That's why I like to use a barbell a lot because it better promotes that hip hinge since you have that barrier up against your knees. But now that you guys know that, we're going to go into a few different warm-ups and a few things to show you to properly teach your client to practice that hip hinging movement. So the first thing for the first warm-up we're going to use here, Chandler's going to grab a kettlebell. We're going to do what's called halos. So halos are a shoulder mobility movement because a lot of the deadlift is being able to keep your shoulders set back and externally rotate and keep your spine in a neutral position. So Chandler's going to go through and do a couple of those halos. So he's going to start with both his hands. Take your hands on both sides there, Chandler. And as he rotates his hands around his head, he's going to drive his elbows up towards the ceiling. So rotate elbows up towards the ceiling. You go maybe 5 to 10 reps. 5 to 10 reps each way. And the point of this, you might think, oh, why is he doing this upper body movement for deadlifts when it's a lower body movement? Because like I said, it's a shoulder mobility movement. So if you're using a barbell, you want to be able to get your shoulders set back to keep that spine in a neutral position to be able to do that movement. If if you can't keep that spine, those shoulder setbacks, most likely your spine's gonna fall out of alignment and you're gonna lose that lower lumbar curvature. So that's, and you can go ahead and set that down, Chandler. That's one movement I like to use. It doesn't necessarily have to be that for your shoulders, but as long as you target some sort of shoulder mobility movement where you're getting external rotation in your shoulders, meaning your shoulders are rotated out and back to keep a lot of tension in your upper back. So that's one warm-up you can do. If you know and like a different upper body slash shoulder, actually I should say shoulder mobility movement, go ahead and do that. Get those shoulders rotating back. The second type of warm up you're going to be doing for this is some sort of dynamic jumping movement. So getting the blood flowing, getting the legs woken up. So a really simple one that I like to do, it's not necessarily a squat jump, it's more of a good morning into a jump. So this one, the good morning, you're gonna put your hands behind your head, keeping those elbows in line with your ears. Again, another shoulder mobility movement. Hinging at the hips, going up into a jump. So as you land, push your butt back, slide your butt back as you land. Again, promoting that hip hinging movement into a big jump. So if there's something else that you guys, sorry, my phone is almost dying. If there's something else you guys like doing to promote that hip hinging, moving fast, and as you come up, Chandler, a little bit faster, you're actually going into a jump. So come up into a big jump, land. As soon as you land, go right back into it, slide your hips back. So Chandler's gonna do a couple more reps there. So those are good two types of warm-ups you guys should use before doing the deadlift. You can pause there. Going into, before you start doing the deadlift, or if it's a new movement for you or your client, one tool that you're going to use to train that movement, to again, to continue to promote that hip hinging motion, and so you understand your client, you understand that proprioception. We've talked about that during our conversation as well. Your mind's ability to navigate what it's doing without being able to, or what your body's doing without being able to actually see it. So if you don't have mirrors, you're going to grab a pole, you're going to get a broomstick, and you're going to hold that on your back so it touches three various points of your body. So it's going to touch the back of your head, between your shoulder blades, and right above your butt. You're going to maintain contact with that pole as you go through that hip hinging movement. So you're going to have a slight bend in your knees. And now Chandler's going to drop his chest towards the ground while he pushes his hips back. All right? So he's going through that movement. Again, that slight little flexion with the knees. And the important thing, maintaining contact on those 3 points as his chest drops towards the ground. All right, so you do a couple reps of those just to, right before you get to the deadlift, to remind yourself of that position you should be in. Good, you set that down, Chandler. All right, and then for us, in the gym here, we're gonna use the barbell. You can slide that barbell up, Chandler, come a little bit closer to the screen. We like using the barbell again, because like I was saying earlier, it kind of, in a way, forces you to slide your hips back because there's that barrier touching you on your shins. And if you do have a barbell, definitely use it opposed to a hex bar. If you don't know what a hex bar is, you don't need to worry about using it then. I'm not going to spend time explaining that. But the barbell gives you some immediate feedback as well as far as keeping the weight in aligned with your center of gravity. So Chandler's going to get set up on the bar here with the bar touching his shins. And I often do deadlift wearing pants or long socks because you want to maintain contact with your shins, with that bar. That's going to keep your knees set back, which in return is going to keep your hips set back. And so before Chandler starts here, he's going to make sure he maintains contact with the bar. He's going to move his feet a little closer together, Chandler, so your feet are about shoulder width apart, and your toes parallel with each other. Your glutes are internal abductors, so you want to keep your feet parallel, just be able to create more tension in your glutes in that posterior chain. All right, Chandler's set up, grab the bar. It's probably tough to tell on the screen, but the bar's touching his shins. Before Chandler goes, he's going to take a big, deep breath. You're going to hold that breath in to create more tension in your body. And as you hold that breath in, you're going to drag that bar up your shins. As soon as it gets to your knees, push those hips forward, and now reverse that motion. So Chandler's going to start sliding his hips back. He's soon as it gets the knees back down to the ground. All right, let's go a few more reps like that, Chandler. Again, from the side angle, you're gonna notice Chandler's gonna maintain contact with his body, with that bar, dragging that bar up his shins. Now I see it pans down, so you'll cut your shins up, pull those shoulders back up top, and reverse that motion. Let's go one more rep there, Chandler. And you can pause there, Chandler. So the big thing about the breathing, when I told Chandler, take a big deep breath, hold it in throughout the movement, that's kind of going back to when we were talking about weight belts, to use a weight belt or not. And so that breathing right there is going to essentially replace the weight belt. What I don't want you guys doing, I don't want you guys teaching your clients to start lifting with the weight belt, because that is then replacing your core, giving you an artificial core. So you want to be able to learn the movement, to learn how to use your core, not just your abs, but the posterior here. And so putting a weight belt out right off the bat gives you a false sense of what you're capable of, and not teaching you, training how to use the core. As your client progresses, maybe after learning the movement, after they learn it, and they're 6 months into doing deadlifts, and they want to start, really progressing a little bit more, and they want to try a true 1 rep max, maybe put it on for that 1 rep max. But before you do that, learning how to use the weight belt the wrong way, the right way, because it's often used wrong, where you cinch it up too tight. But until you get there, avoid the weight belt. Learn how to the proper breathing, which is that breathing technique. If you guys want to look it up, it's called the Valsalva maneuver. But learn that to use your core. So Chandler, let's do a few more reps here. Now with that in mind, taking that big deep breath, holding that breath in as you're going through that movement. And reversing that. Once he gets to the ground, you can exhale, take another big deep breath, fill your stomach with air. That's your weight belt, holding your breath in, squeezing your core, and pausing down at the bottom. Great, and that's it for the deadlifts, guys. Thanks, Chandler, for helping out. The one other thing you guys want to be aware of, or as far as properly performing this lift, is limitations in your flexibility. So a couple things that may interfere with this is your hamstring flexibility. So if you notice when Chandler was set, and like we talked about before, you're not down in a full squat, so we're a little bit straighter with your legs, so it might be some tightness in your hamstrings, or it could be tightness in your hip flexors. A lot of times it's not your hamstrings you might think it is, it's your hip flexors that are too tight. So spending some time rolling your hip flexors out with the lacrosse ball essentially will kind of open up those hip flexors and release everything back here. So if they're pulling too tight, it's going to lengthen your hamstrings, stretch out your hamstrings, and it's going to make them tight. So a lot of times it could be your hip flexors and not your hamstrings. But you want to be able to get a little bit straighter leg when you start this movement to avoid doing the squat. So hopefully that covers everything that you guys did, covers any other questions. And let me know if you guys have any other questions on that. All right, thanks guys.